Vegas has win totals out for all 16 SEC teams. Yes, the old 14 in Oklahoma and Texas, who I feel like have acclimated well to the Southeastern Conference. Which teams will win more or fewer games than the expectations, whether explicitly or implicitly, that Vegas has set? That's a question I'm going to try and answer in this segment, and I want you to comment down below what you think of these win totals. Which do you think are win totals that are undervaluing the team they're assigned to, overvaluing the team they're assigned to? Who's your favorite pick to go over their win total and your favorite pick to go under? Let me know in the comments section. And also, please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Like the video to give us a boost into the algorithm. And check out the video description to hit the notification bell on my college football podcast, which is just a playlist for all of my content if you want to follow it more closely. And there's also a link to a Discord server, which is free to join. Everything I asked you before then is free. Doesn't sign you up for anything. It's a great way to get more amazing college football content. And if you want to donate to the channel or support us monthly, sign up for my Patreon page membership or purchase merchandise via my merchandise store. Link to those are in the description. But I want to bring up these SEC win totals here, go through them, and give some of my picks. So let me slide over to the left-hand side of your screen and bring out these win totals. So tied for first, we have Texas, we have Georgia, we have Alabama at 9.5 wins. We have tied for fourth Tennessee, LSU, and Ole Miss at 8.5 wins. At seventh, tied for seventh, we have 5 teams set at 7.5 wins. Florida, A&M, South Carolina, Auburn, and Missouri. And we have, weirdly, 12th and 13th place. Oklahoma at 6.5 wins is 12th. 13th is Arkansas, set at 5.5 wins. Those are very intriguing situations, and I think their unique win totals for the conference reflect that. And then tied at 14th, we have Kentucky and Vanderbilt at 4.5. Mississippi State's one of those other teams whose win total is so low that we're probably not going to talk about it, all the way down there at 3.5. The team that got just completely shanked and disemboweled live on air by Toledo, a MAC school. They didn't even look like an SEC team last year. If not for Purdue taking the spotlight as one of the worst Power 4, Power 5 teams in 21st century college football history, Mississippi State would have received such attention. That's how bad they were last season. What speaks to me, what strikes me here, is that compared to the Big Ten, and I did my Big Ten win totals yesterday live, so if you want to check out that episode, just go to my channel page, look at the live videos, you'll see Big Ten win totals, and the segment for that's already been cut. In fact, I'll link it on the top right corner of the screen. You'll see a little pop-up there. If you're interested in Big Ten win totals, just click that. Thank you. Anyway, the Big Ten was a little bit more unbalanced. You had the 3 teams at the top for win totals at 10.5. No one was at 9.5. And you didn't have as many teams with 7.5 win totals or greater. You actually had fewer Big Ten teams that are projected to win around 7 or 8 games. And what that tells me is that the SEC is viewed by Vegas, and I know this as well because the SEC and Big Ten are pretty similar in power ratings. SEC slightly similar, even if you avoid FPI, which is a little bit biased toward ESPN. Even if you avoid that, most power ratings say the SEC is a little bit stronger. And Vegas views the SEC also as stronger because they have more teams projected to win 7, 8 games relative to the Big Ten. And consequentially, because of that, and because they don't have Purdue, Maryland, Northwestern, UCLA, they don't have multiple teams who might be toward the bottom of the chili pot. The SEC maybe has 3 at the most, maybe 2, Vanderbilt by talent, Mississippi State all around. A lot of teams aren't viewed as surefire 10 or 11 win teams, like in the Big Ten. Ohio State, Oregon, and Penn State are viewed as you're winning 10 games or 11, in the case of Penn State, potentially 12. I don't think anyone is picking, myself included, any of these SEC teams to win 12 games. 11 wins may even be pushing it. And I'm someone who's pretty high on Texas. high on Georgia, not necessarily high on Alabama, but I can see why others are. The fact that their highest win total, the SEC's highest win total for any team is 9.5, speaks to how Vegas and many in college football, the whales and the sharps. I almost forgot my betting terms there, but I don't bet. The sharps totally view this conference as one that's up for cannibalization. So that's something that strikes me and that immediately jumps out to me when I look at these win totals. To go to my easier picks for overs and unders, I would say Texas and Texas A&M are my easiest picks to go over. Texas, they have Arch Manning coming in, who had some limited action last year. Ironically, a lot of it came against Mississippi State, but he played some against Georgia, a team that kicked Texas's butt physically, and I think that might be a game that's good for Arch Manning to get used to, nothing going right for him, facing that adversity and having that in his mind. Texas played him some against Texas A&M and in other games too, whether in backup duty or using him in obvious quarterback run situations. He has really good arm talent too, but that's not what I want to focus on. He's a part of the reason why I would say this is an easy over, but he's not the main reason. The main reason is the Texas defense, where they return Trey Moore, they return Colin Simmons, they bring back Ethan Burke, and then Michael Taft comes back, Malik Muhammad comes back. They return Anthony Hill Jr., who I think is one of the best defensive players in all of the country. And they moved Trey Moore to linebacker because they're that confident in their edge players. I think they have one of the best defenses in America, if not the number one defense for 2025. And that, when you are playing Georgia on the road, when you were playing Ohio State on the road, and when you were facing DJ Lagway on the road, is very helpful. It would be one thing if Texas had to face those schools, many of whom have a lot of offensive talent, or in the case of Georgia, it's just hard to win in Sanford. They haven't lost a game there since 2019, and Smart has already 2 wins over Sark, even though Sarkisian and Texas have only been in the SEC for a year. Having a defense and being able to game control your opponents is very helpful. And I think because of their defense and the combination of their defense with how Kyle Flood recruits on the offensive line and with how talented Arch Manning is, and the fact that Texas just continues to build their roster in terms of recruiting talent, their strength and conditioning coach won the Strength and Conditioning Coach of the Year award, and they have had 2 seasons in a row putting double-digit players into the NFL. You may see that as a negative for why they won't be very good this year relative to where they were last year and in 2023, but they improved last year compared to 2023 when a lot of teams did not. 2024 was a down year in football, and Texas was one of those teams who improved compared to what they were the prior year, despite losing so much and despite Quinn Ewers being injured for much of the year and then suffering injuries on the offensive line and at other positions as well. So I love the Texas over here. I think Texas is at least beating one of Ohio State, Georgia, and Florida, and I can easily see them beating 2. I can even see them beating all 3 and going 12-0. I'm not going to predict it to happen, but I can see it. That's how strongly I believe in Texas and their ceiling, and I don't think their floor is that low. So Texas, I think they're going to go 10-2 most likely, or 11-1 is certainly more likely than 9-3. So that's an easy pick for me for the over. A&M, they're top 10 in returning production. Top 10 in returning production with Marcel Reed coming back. They have a wonderful offensive line. It could be a Joe Moore Award caliber offensive line. It's one that I really, really like when looking at the SEC, the defensive lines they'll play, their schedule lines up. They get Notre Dame on the road, yes, but it's 3 games in, and Notre Dame's returning fewer than 60% of their 2024 production. Meanwhile, A&M is, returning in the 70s right there. That O-line, I'm telling you, Armaj Reed-Adams, Chase Basantis, and then Trezon III and Demetrius Crownover at tackle. It's a mean O-line with Le'Veon Moss and Amari Daniels behind them. And then on defense, they bring back Albert Regis. They return Tareen York and Scooby Williams. And I like Mike Elko, and Elko is actually going to be more involved with the defense this year. I think that's a good thing for Texas A&M. And the fact that the win total is set at 7.5, look at their schedule. Which teams are guaranteed to beat them? I'd say the only one is Texas on the road. That's the only guaranteed L. So you then look at the guaranteed wins: Samford, UTSA, Utah State, probably Mississippi State at home, maybe Arkansas on the road, depending where Pittman's at. Arkansas may have quit by then. He may have been fired by then. Anywhere from 4 to 5 guaranteed wins. And that leaves you anywhere from 6 to 7 wins where let's just call it what it is. Let's just say 50-50. So that would be, if you have 5 guaranteed wins, let's say Pittman gets fired, well, that would be 8-4. Lost to Texas, split your 50-50 games, win the guaranteed ones. You get to 7.5 with those 4 guaranteed wins and the L, and then you split the difference there. So I believe, looking at Florida at home, Notre Dame on the road, LSU on the road, South Carolina at home, Missouri on the road, all of those teams, and those are the more 50-50 games, they lose more than A&M does. And I don't think any of those schools, except for potentially Notre Dame with Marcus Freeman, have a better coach than Mike Elko right now. And none of those schools, outside of, again, maybe Notre Dame and definitely Texas, have more talent than A&M. So A&M having a better coach than most people on their schedule, having more returning production than most teams on their schedule, and more raw talent, and staffs typically have their biggest impact in their second year, new coaching staffs. I love A&M this year, so that's an over for me. Arkansas, this is going to be short, this is going to be sweet. The fact that Josh Pate, on one of his live shows, when asked about Arkansas, just kind of took a big sigh and said, I don't know, and then took another pause. And he's an SEC guy in particular. He knows college football very well, but he's focused on the SEC. That's his bread and butter. That's where he grew up. That's where he started out. That tells me everything I need to know. That, along with the fact that they're bringing in almost 40 transfers, and they lost really fantastic players, especially on the offensive line, which is Pittman's specialty, like Patrick Kutas or Joshua Braun. Those were great guards from Arkansas who just got up and left. Taylon Green stayed, but he was one of the few stars that did stay. And a lot of those other players just, well, they got up and left. They did. And they're relying on a lot of transfers, a veteran QB, yes, and Bobby Petrino returns to be offensive coordinator, but their schedule's tough. They play Notre Dame non-conference, and they get a lot of other tough games in which they're going to be underdogs. So I think it's an easy under 5.5 there. Some tougher picks, but ones I'm more confident on, are Georgia over, Oklahoma over, Missouri over, and then I like the under for LSU and Kentucky. Georgia last season went 10-2 with perhaps the toughest schedule in college football history, or very close to it, regular season-wise especially. And they had, this is an insane stat. In fact, I'm going to look this up. A friend texted it to me. And while I look it up, I'm going to try my best to keep talking to you. Carson Beck was very up and down. Very up and down. So Carson Beck had multiple games where he threw 3 interceptions and Georgia won the game by double digits. And his text after that was, like, what the F is that? That was, and the F was a word that rhymes with duck. Like, verbatim, that's what he said after that. And then he said, and wait until you hear the teams. And I said Florida was one, and I was correct. And then he said Texas was the other. Against Texas and Florida, Beck threw 3 interceptions, and they won the game by double digits. It's insane. It's insane. And they physically kicked the rear of both of those schools. They injured DJ Lagway, and when you injure a QB that talented, that says more about your defense typically than the injured QB's strength and conditioning program of his team. And then the way they did Texas, And Texas would have won it all if they beat Ohio State. The Ohio State-Texas Cotton Bowl was the de facto national title game. That was insanely impressive. And they did it again in Atlanta. They did it again. Seriously. Again in the trenches. It's just Texas had a better game plan and Ewers was more healthy, and they weren't as surprised by what Georgia was doing. But the fact that Georgia had the depth last year, and they do again this year, to pull out 5 defensive linemen and mess with any offensive line they have, the fact that they can do more than that on defense, they can run almost whatever they want on defense. They're a well-prepared team. Smart punched above his weight class. He had one of his worst teams of his tenure, and they still won 11 games, won the SEC, almost beat Alabama on the road. Just crazy stuff. And then what if the middle 2 minutes of the game against Notre Dame went the other way and Georgia doesn't fumble it and they don't allow a kickoff return for a touchdown? They may have beaten Notre Dame. They were physically winning against Notre Dame too. Notre Dame just won on special teams and won the turnover battle. And with a backup QB, well, that's a death sentence, especially when winning on special teams means you get a whole touchdown out of it. So I think even with a tough schedule where Georgia, they play Tennessee on the road, yes, but they get Ole Miss at home, and Ole Miss loses everyone. They get Alabama at home. They get Texas at home. I think it's an easier schedule than what they had last year. And a lot went wrong for them. So Georgia regressing to the mean doesn't mean they get worse. It actually means they get better. So I love Georgia there. For Oklahoma and Missouri, not as confident for the over as Georgia. But Missouri at 7.5 seems low when they start the year off, I believe, with 6 or 7 straight home games. Is that correct? Yes, it's 6 straight home games, and they get a bye before the Alabama game. And their road games in conference are Auburn, Vanderbilt, Arkansas, and Oklahoma. Just seems pretty low to me. And I like Drinkwitz as a coach, and I think they did well in the portal. Oklahoma, they are a lethal unit on defense. And I think because of their defense and because of John Mateer and because of the fact that I think they're better roster-wise than Missouri and LSU, or at least they should be. Doesn't mean I'm going to have them power-ranked higher or that they will be power-rated higher by objective measurements at the end of the year. But in theory, they should have a better roster than Missouri. It should be better than LSU, definitely better than Ole Miss, should be better than Tennessee, South Carolina, Auburn. If they just punch above their weight class a few times and then perform well at home, they should get to 7 wins pretty handily. And that's not even including a game against Michigan, where I look at the Michigan game and I think at the end of the year, Michigan will be significantly better than Oklahoma. But that doesn't mean they'll be significantly better in week 2. Oklahoma has a massive experience edge over Michigan in week 2. If they lose to Michigan, I still think they'll get to 7 wins. If they beat Michigan, I think they're getting to 8, and they're shooting over their win total by more than a game. So I love Oklahoma over. And then LSU and Kentucky, I'm not buying LSU this year. I think that losing as much as they did in the O-line with Nussmeier, who's more of a pro-style statue QB, is a death sentence. And then the fact they start off against Clemson in week 1, if they lose that game, and I think they will because Clemson's just amazing this year, that will once again put a negative tone on the year. And they have to play Alabama on the road. They have to play Oklahoma on the road. They have to play Florida at home and play at Ole Miss. And Ole Miss and LSU, whoever's the home team in that rivalry, typically doesn't lose. Vanderbilt on the road won't be easy. A&M and South Carolina at home won't be easy. I just think there's at least 4 losses there, and that means they go under. I'd stay away from Alabama, from Tennessee, Ole Miss, from Florida, South Carolina, Auburn, Vanderbilt, and Mississippi State. If I'm wrong on any of these picks, it will be on ones that I'm staying away from. Alabama and Florida have enough coming back, enough seniority, and enough talent, whether Florida, it's mainly almost exclusively at QB and O-line, and then Alabama, it's everywhere, to where it might be a no-brainer to pick them to go over, especially for Alabama, because when you look at teams who have a top 5 roster in terms of recruiting rankings, and you assemble those teams, the only one who returns more than 55% of their production is Alabama. And they're not in the high 50s. They're in the 60s. And a lot went wrong for them last year. And they upgraded an offensive coordinator, replacing Sheridan, who's still on the team. And I don't think he was the problem last year. And it's not an insult to Sheridan to say he was replaced. He's good. I just think that Grubb's elite. There's a difference there. It might be a no-brainer for Alabama to go over. And as for Florida, if Georgia takes a step back, if Texas takes a step back, if Miami takes a step back, and Ole Miss does, and Florida State just doesn't recover well enough to challenge Florida because that wasn't a game last year, Florida could win 9 games. Heck, they could win 10, depending on how the schedule pans out, for sure. I'm not going to go that far at all, but I think 7-5, 8-4 is their most likely record, and I'm not the highest person on Florida. So if I'm wrong and some of those people who are very high on Florida are correct, this team's going 8-4 or better, and that will be over their win total of 7.5. So thank you so much for watching and checking out these SEC win totals. I had a lot of fun making this video. Make sure to subscribe, like, hit the bell, and comment your thoughts on my analysis of these win totals and my picks, and just your thoughts on the win totals overall. Thank you so much, and have a fantastic day.